So, what we're going to do, we have under reduce commercial waste. After Dawn and Wendy and Alicia, I think they were working on all of these strategies, sort of compiled everybody's feedback. They came up with a list of 14 strategies, and we are literally just going to go through this list. And for the first sort of round of review, our first task is to make sure that they're actual strategies, refine if needed, if they're like too general or maybe not ambitious enough or not realistic, things like that. So that's our like first task. And any thoughts you all have on this, we're just going to jump right in. So is this size of the screen okay for you all to see?
I would love it if we could maybe like go bigger, because it's got
a little bigger.
Yeah, just take off 3 or 4 minute time.
Because we old.
How's that?
I am glad that your sound is adjusted well. I was having to go back and forth with Wendy and Dawn. It was like I couldn't hear Dawn at all.
It's so funny. We all have the same laptop, but it's so funny, like city laptop, and we all have issues with the sound. So, okay. So y'all let me know what I can do to help with any of this. So we're just gonna literally just start going down the list. So number 1 under reduce commercial waste is to incentivize companies to reduce, and I don't think the last thing I'll add, I don't think these are in any sort of priority order right now or anything, so don't take anything, from the numbering here. Incentivize companies to reduce food waste and landscaping debris through infrastructure improvements and organic waste reduction strategies. Any thoughts on any improvements to that, or does it sound like a good strategy at this point? Again, we're not worried about timelines or metrics right now. That'll be later in the process.
Well, I mean, infrastructure is kind of says what it is in general, even though it can be lots of different things. Mm-hmm. But organic waste reduction strategies, even though we could, what are those? What are examples of that? And it also says to me, if I'm the public and I see that, I go, what the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
Now, maybe if we have those, do we have those strategies?
Yeah, it's like strategies within this strategy,
yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of okay to be something if we can, show, the sub bullet that mm-hmm. Here's what one of those strategies are. Or even if they're just examples at this point.
That's what I was going to say. I think each one of these things should include an example, because we're drilling down to the point where we should have a really good list of examples of what we mean. I mean, that's like where we are anyway. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it really does help frame it up, I think. And just before we roll to what you said a minute ago about ignoring the prioritization or the numbering, will that eventually be a part of our process?
Yes, definitely.
So maybe start thinking about that.
Yeah.
Like, don't put that out of our minds.
We can,
that eventually
we can totally
we will want to prioritize.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do, there's 2 sort of ways I'm going to take notes here. One is in this column C, I'm going to put any revisions to the actual text. So for example, what I'll probably do is add in, like, I'm going to take this, and we'll get to this in a second, but and organic waste reduction strategies, and then put in parentheses, for example, and then y'all have to give me an example. And then over here we have a comments column. So if you all have at this point any thoughts on things like prioritization, timelines, metrics, that's not the concentration for today, but if it just comes to you while we're thinking about it, I will take that down as well, so we don't lose that.
Well, but without going any further than that, I mean, what were you all thinking would be, because I'm sort of like waste reduction, organic waste reduction strategies. Okay, well, providing the infrastructure, and I mean, perhaps is it a program that like, for instance, I don't know if they told you, Brianna, but I reached out to Dawn and Wendy for a letter of support for, our pilot project grant that we're applying for right now, which is going to provide free compost, organic collection for 10 to 20 businesses for a period of time.
Yeah, that's precisely what.
Yeah.
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 I mean, almost 100%, and just how different sectors are incentivized and assisted is the question. You know what I'm saying? But that is 100%. I mean, what we're trying to do is divert organic waste.
Now, another thing that I actually kind of jumped into the end of the sentence there, but up front, I almost feel like food waste and landscaping should be two separate things. Or, I mean, at least, you know, you don't have an organic waste reduction strategy that, you know, most of them are going to be, one's going to be specific to food waste and the other to organics.
Okay.
I mean, you know, landscaping rather.
Although, you know, in an ideal world, does it make sense that it is all combined? If it is you know, it's if everyone is doing it, does it make, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
sure, well, quite frankly, yeah, if you wanted to actually build out infrastructure, and you know that like the organic, you know, the Organics Council, Virginia Compost Council is pushing still hard. They still, you know, they've gotten some policy adjustments, or they think they're getting them, that are going to allow, you know, compost facilities to be more easily permitted.
sure.
And so,
Well, they need
yeah.
to.
And
I mean,
so if
yeah.
you're doing that, you actually want landscaping and food waste in the same breath in the
Exactly.
same facility, because that's what cooks the food more quickly.
So you know what, yeah, so you know what needs to be a part of something, and I don't know where it is that we need to heavily incentivize and assist and give tax breaks to people who want to start and operate compost facilities. I mean, honestly, if we're going to be able to, because that's been the problem for the last 10 years, right, Tom? I mean, there's like a push pull with the amount of people who want to do it, and then can you actually service it? Can you do it? Can you do it? I mean, and I mean, it's got to, the change will be when, you know, we need the facilities to service this new infrastructure, and we've got the budget to do it, which is always, I've got dollar signs back here going, when do we get to the budgeting part of this? And and who pays for?
But think about this, for, you know, this is kind of like a little bit of a eureka, you know, moment for me anyhow. It's just kind of like, you know, we've had Nope, you know, fighting an uphill battle. I mean, whatever, you know, there've been all kinds of stories about how that's happened. But bless their hearts for sticking with it against all odds when they had to truck the stuff 45 miles away. I mean, if they've done as well as they've done just through perseverance, they have created, at least, it's kind of like, you know, we're looking for this grant thing to help move the demand, move the awareness around. But man, if we had a facility, we could really do this thing.
Totally. And, you know, I mean, that is the new education. That is the new buzz. I don't mean it's new for, you know, a good group of people that, you know, recycling we can't focus on recycling. I mean, we've got to get organic waste under control. It's too easy not to. It's ridiculous not to. So, you know, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's that demand. And if one municipality creates that demand because they've created the system for it, I mean, you know, what a leading by example kind of a thing. And then you get people, and then you're creating your own gold, really, with mulch.
All right, cool. So I'm listening, taking notes. This is not the final language. I'll just say that. So it doesn't have to be perfect right now, but I think that's a great new strategy. I don't know where it belongs because it's not just commercial waste, right? So we've got this new strategy we need these facilities before, you know, to accomplish all of these organic waste things. Are y'all okay generally with the combination here in the strategy? Because I think it might be applicable in later ones too, of food waste and landscaping debris as organic waste?
I think that's fine. They're just two separate animals to.
They are, but I think the statement is broad enough at this point. You know, it's just telling even people like Harris Williams downtown, you know, a mergers and acquisitions firm, there are these things that you can do in your lunchroom, and there are these things that you can make sure that your landscaper does. And then you can go to the next, you know what I'm saying? So I think they do. I think it's fine together in this point.
But it's two different incentives, really.
It totally is.
But
Well,
it's
it is.
completely, incredibly easy, really, to, haul your landscaping stuff,
Mhm.
you know?
But the food is something different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else any other thoughts on this strategy? So we have a couple of examples. It might be something where we separate this into two, but any other changes or I guess to this right now?
We trust you.
Okay, cool. So, and this is being recorded. So if I get something wrong, you can be like, nope, we did not say that. All right, moving down, provide education and incentives for effective organic waste reduction at all commercial buildings.
Brian, so you
Yeah.
want to do it this way versus like, I thought we were gonna like assess whether or not it was realistic, ambitious, or just not really. That's just sort of
That's sort of
part of
like
the discussion.
all what we're doing right
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
So
right.
in this sort of refining of language, let's assess whether it's strategic,
Okay.
realistic, and ambitious.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking to do.
Yeah.
Anything else on the first one now with that thought in mind?
Well, I mean, it's somewhat ambitious, but yet it's not like a new technology.
Yeah, exactly.
Not innovative,
Yeah.
but necessary. But it's
Right.
necessary. It's a tool that's got to be in place.
And so very realistic, and even like, now, would we be using the equity screening tool to go back and look at this later?
Yep, we will
Okay,
be. That's the second part of all of
Got it,
this
got it.
is,
All right.
And
can we create jobs with this? You
Yeah.
know, like that kind of stuff.
yeah, and I can't remember, but is there a ease of putting it into place? Because in my opinion, other than a budgetary thing, because an incentive, in my opinion, is a budget item for the city to swallow, if you will. And so it seems like a very easy thing to put into place. So there might be a scale.
But you know what? There's also like a financial advantage here, because if the city were able to do this, we would be a hub for this. Like, I mean, McGill charges,
Oh, totally. Oh,
$45 a ton.
if we did the facility thing,
Yeah.
for sure, but
Right.
just the incentivizing companies one,
Mhm.
it should be super easy.
Yep. Sorry, I know we have a time limit here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's
sorry.
keep going. All right, so the second one is very related, it looks like.
Yeah.
Education and incentives for effective organic waste reduction at all commercial buildings and require owners to offer organic collection services to all occupants.
I think this one's,
I
kind of
know-
priority wise, I'd like to address recycling first.
Okay.
But I mean, the San Francisco model, that's where it is. But I think, so it would be great. But what the hell? I mean, I drive by, businesses, the norm is there's no recycling dumpster out there. So let's require recycling
Yeah,
first.
it looks like we're going to get into that too. Like,
Yeah, I think recycling, that it is a little bit
yeah.
further.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But so education, I mean, obviously is a no-brainer and would only serve to support, honestly, in somewhat the first.
Yeah, it seems like these
Gotta
two
be.
go together for sure.
I
Like
mean,
in
there's
one-
got to be an education and awareness component to almost all of these, but your audience is going to be different. In one instance, it's the public, and the other instance, it's the business community that you're trying to convince that they need to do this, and they have to do this as a way of the way we're going to do things in Richmond. Does that make sense?
Well, and it's kind of like, okay, if we can get, the incentives out there for people to start doing something, but probably almost, create some incentives, immediately. It's just step by step. And then if we have the infrastructure where it's, now it's much easier and much cheaper across the board to incentivize people to actually do it. And then by the time we get to 2035, let's make it a full-on requirement.
So do you think this is actually two strategies potentially? First, the education and incentives part, and then maybe once we get to refining timelines, which will be in the summer, the requirement comes in later?
I think this is a tactic. This is a necessary thing under, yeah, I think I almost feel like it's it's an action item under the incentivized companies. There has to be an education step to it. And maybe in creating this, there was another thought to it, but right now it feels like that makes sense. And it feels like if there's the same language around recycling down below, that it might be the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it's really incentivize or require.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Incentivize and eventually require.
Yeah, but we educate every step along the way.
Oh.
And even when you require, there's got to be a huge educational component, and then you finally get to the point where you're giving penalties.
Yeah. Okay. Let's keep going.
Bless you, Brianne, having to.
I know. I don't mean to rush you guys, but we do need to. I want to get through all of these so that we can come back. All right. So, update construction standards to require permanent siting and staging for recycling and composting receptacles, as well as adding requirements for construction and demolition material recycling reporting. Man, that sounds good. I mean, I don't know anything about this. I should add. So.
Well, I do. I mean,
I love it.
It's a requirement in DC, to design your loading dock so that you have place for a recycling dumpster as well. So, so this is very realistic. I don't know about the composting piece of it.
But if it's going to be a part of the deal, then it should be. Right. I mean, if we're working towards everybody composting, it needs to be 100%.
Cool.
And that seems like an easy thing to do and a priority. So I feel like the easy things are priorities.
And the C&D requirement, is done almost seamlessly in the DC market.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a requirement of LEED. I don't know that it's I think it actually is in like some of the ordinances up there too. I'm mostly working with LEED, buildings. So that's the main driver, but you're also very aware of the fact that, the DC government or the Arlington government has its own set of requirements.
Well, here's the thing too. I mean, you could imagine that if recycling and organic waste issues are brought forth, like we just talked about organic waste, and we know that it'll be a gradual thing. We update construction standards and, gradually work into, it's not a 100% requirement, but it's a future knowledge that they will have to, or something, you know what I'm saying? Kind of make that a gradual thing as well as.
Well, I think it kind of goes back to, I mean, recycling is like, okay, commingled is kind of the status quo right now. It used to be dumpsters. It used to be rolling totes of, only paper and cans. So now it's a dumpster thing. So now that is an accepted practice. Composting, we still haven't figured out what the vehicle is going to be.
No, I know. And it's going to be really, really hard for places in the fan. I mean, think about, but New York City does it. So, we can figure it out, but everybody's like, can't imagine all this food waste sitting out for, and I know that's residential, but anyway.
Well, so with the folks that I'm working with, even just commercial buildings, it is literally like dumpster, and then a line of compost totes. So that's,
because that's the vehicle offer. Yeah. And that'll have to be, and maybe that changes with this process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool. All right, let's keep going. Actually, first, I'm curious, is there much composting waste associated with C&D?
No.
So I was just curious. I was like, oh, can compost something? I don't know.
Yeah, not typically. I mean, mostly it's just drywall and beams and things like that. I mean, you're gonna have some lumber, but that's being processed on its own, and it might end up in a compost facility if they were co-located or something for the waste wood product.
All right, cool. Here's the big one: mandate an equitable multifamily and commercial recycling program. So this is residential and commercial. We might have a repeat of this strategy in one of the other objectives, but for new and existing properties through incentives to property owners and cost-saving measures for residents with equivalent levels of service as trash collection.
Okay, I mean, the incentive piece there, I don't know why that even, to me, that doesn't need to be there. To me, it's a requirement. I mean, it's not that hard. I mean, yes, we can help to sell folks when we pass this ordinance on the fact that, you know, showing them that the recyclers are, you know, only going to charge the same amount as they are for trash or less, if depending on how the markets change. But
well, yeah, because it's like, honestly, it's basically the mandate and trying to give someone an incentive that can't coexist, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think we're ready for a mandate here, and I don't think we have to like mamby-pamby it with incentives.
Do you think there's maybe, I don't know if this is somewhere later, but like an education or, you know, maybe an element there rather than incentivize?
There's a constant education around recycling. I mean, they can't stop. I mean, things, they change rules like people change underwear. I mean,
well, and it's like, you know, the biggest thing in the recycling business these days is plastic bags, because, you know, you just can't be in a bag anymore. And on the residential side, it's not as hard, but on the commercial side, that's still the standard.
Well, and now styrofoam we get to claim.
Speaking of which, let's just go right into the next one. So advocate in the General Assembly to encourage bottle deposits, enabling legislation around plastic bags. So isn't this happening in some form already, or something? I don't know if y'all know more about this than me, probably.
Big time. I mean, lots of action where this is concerned. We got the balloon ban.
Okay. And then cities can already tax plastic bags, I think, right? Or there's some sort of legislation related to that.
You know what? I'm less familiar with the city ones because I don't live in the city.
Well, I mean, it's not city versus county.
Gotcha.
In
I
that
didn't know
case, it's you know, whether or not people can do it across the board through local governments. And I am not completely sure where that stands, because it's kind of fluctuated up and down a little bit. I mean, Arlington was doing some stuff, but now I think they're kind of feel like they're not, or whatever.
All I know is I got an email from someone in Roanoke who was like, hey, is anyone else doing plastic bag taxes? We're trying to figure out how to do it. And everybody was like, nope, we're trying to figure out how to do it too. So there's something happening with that.
Well, I would say that we are not advocating with the General Assembly, though. I don't think that's a strategy. I mean, I mean, you know, because you have all these groups that are doing it.
That's what I would say. I would say make sure, you know, yes, I would make sure, you know, partner or be at the table, partner with the people who, and that's Virginia Plastics Pollution Prevention Network. They're honestly they have everybody at the table who's fighting plastics in Virginia.
Well, yes. I mean, so
I know this is Richmond, but you know what I mean.
Well, just my question there, Breon, is like, I'm not familiar with the city, you know, advocating, lobbying for specific things. Like
yes, we do actually. Yeah, we do actually do that. So every year the city puts together like a legislative priority packet, and I don't know who specifically does it, but there is some sort of interaction with the state government every year on like what our municipal priorities are. And so this would fit under that, but I think also to your point, it's being a voice with these partners, you know, because we are not the experts, it's the partners that are the experts. And often what we do is partner with other localities to express support for something, you know, at the General Assembly level. So that's the kind of stuff that we do.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that's great. I just sort of like with these, I mean, I think all of these are still just going to be applicable, especially if you say, you know, for instance, I would say like advocate in the General Assembly for environmental bans, you know, for legislation that, you know, that helps reduce litter and, you know, whatever. such as bottle deposits, encourage enabling legislation for environmental causes, such as bottle deposits, plastic bags. And even if some of these things like the balloons and polystyrene things have made progress this year, like they're happening, but they're not really happening yet. They're just like token.
Oh yeah. But it's the start of it. I mean,
Right.
now they've got a date that they've got to, yeah.
So in other words, but having that list on there is still pertinent, because if the city believes in it, then they can continue to support the ongoing efforts, because those policies and things are going to be changed as we move forward.
Well, and honestly, just because it doesn't fit with the others necessarily, litter fines. Halifax County just increased their fine on being caught for littering. And that's a step in the right direction. We hardly ever advocate for anything, and we wrote a letter for that one.
Those localities have to advocate specifically to be able to do that?
Well, a delegate out of Halifax proposed to increase, it was a bill.
Okay. And is it that only for Halifax, or can now all localities? Oh, so we have to okay.
Yeah, you have to have a sponsor. A delegate has to sponsor the bill. But I will tell you though that that caught on with other localities right after it happened, which was 3 weeks ago, Tom, now?
Yeah, which is great, because
got a lot of folks like going, I'm gonna do that. Now they're waiting to see, if they really, they could stand to make more money, to be honest with you, if they got serious with it.
Yeah. Okay, great.
All
right, let's keep going. Number 6, encourage businesses to reduce waste through education regarding cost savings, marketing opportunities through green business challenges and other incentives. I think we kind of covered this in some of the previous ones around education and incentives, but
this makes me think of encourage businesses to be a Virginia Green member.
Yeah.
You're right down there. That's number 9.
Oh, gotcha.
You're right. Yeah.
Well, and this goes back to, Brian, I think you were maybe interning back then when Alicia and I were working on the Green Business Challenge. So that's something more of a, real tangible thing versus just sort of like, just a couple of flyer fact sheets that say, this or this. That's implying sign up for this, and we will have this, big, promotion around all those businesses that sign up.
Yeah. I think 6 is a sub of 9. It's a piece of it. What is the Virginia Green and the excellence? What does that mean? Well, it's where we encourage businesses to. Blah, blah, blah.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that if you're saying those, you can combine those, but I would just point out that we're not actually zero waste programs. Voluntary,
environmental, sustainable.
Voluntary certification and recognition programs.
Well, then it should actually be encourage corporate partnerships through, I think, just established and green programs, such as, because I don't think we want to limit. I think there's a long list of people that we can pull onto that.
Well, you could even combine it with you could use the business challenge function too. Absolutely. As another. Definitely. Or you'd say those things such as these, or perhaps our own local green business challenge.
Perfect. Okay, let's go back up to 7. Include recycling and composting collection citing requirements in commercial permitting.
Is that another mandate?
Well, I'm a little confused. Like what, it's the distinction between designing for and permitting, the ordinance versus permitting. I'm not sure what the distinction is there, but.
So. I am not sure. either. I'm guessing based on the previous one that was about
Yeah.
construction, that it's something like if you want to establish a business in the city of Richmond, you have to have recycling and composting collection, on your site. That I don't know. That's what I'm.
Designated areas. You should have to show that. Yeah.
That language should be identical. And the only thing that should change out is organic waste, and then in the next one, recycling, so that
Okay.
there's no confusion with, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't you think? Because it's like, to Tom, if it is permitting, is it, yeah, is it,
I'm confused by permitting. What exactly are we meaning by permitting there? I mean, you got
to get a
permit.
COI, to get a certificate of occupancy, you've got to have so many parking spaces and da, 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 da. Now, that's new construction only, because I don't know what you do with these.
But that's,
type
so we're
places.
just referring to a building construction permit there?
Oh.
That's what I would
maybe.
think. That's what I was thinking. I don't know. What
Yeah,
other
well-
permit?
Right. Well, I mean, to me, there's like designing a whole new place. And then there's, to get a building construction permit, you're just building one new shed, for instance.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of hard to require them now to do that. However, outside of that, so there's just building, there's designing for, yes, it's got to be in the ordinance. Permitting, yeah, anyhow, maybe we just combine those two concepts, but then there's also just the requirement that everybody's got to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you built your dumb hotel with only one bay in it for trash. Well, that doesn't get you out of the requirement.
Yeah, that's true. We have, mandate commercial recycling. So as another strategy.
I mean, it's all about new construction. It can absolutely be mandated. Hardywood wants to, create a whole new place. They've got big requirements, because this thing is going to grow, and you're going to do more and more when this is not a thing that's going away. But you've got, again, Carey Street Cafe, the new owners, and they're going to be struggling with where they're going to put and how they're going to deal with composting on a constant basis. That's the reality, but it's dealt with in other places.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, for instance, so we create a requirement for recycling from everybody. Well, one of the biggest things in the fan is that you can't, these places are just throwing up their hands because they have no place to put the recycling containers or whatever. And then they're getting fined sometimes because they're leaving them out on the sidewalk. So, or these are getting hassled. And so, then you've got like a Roanoke or a downtown Blacksburg where they want to achieve the same thing. So the government helps provide for it, that system. Now, yes, they pay into it. They get something on their bill or whatever. But like Roanoke, they literally go around every night. People are allowed to put their recycling out on the sidewalk every night, and they go around and pick it up. That, yes, they pay for it. Mm-hmm. So it's just, it's becoming specialized, because if you sit back and wait for TFC to provide the thing that's going to help them downtown, well, that's a 5% of their market, and you can't expect TFC to develop a whole. Totally. The private sector is just not going to work that way.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Oh, it is. It's a whole totally new way of dealing with it. It can't be the way it is right now. So
regarding permitting, yes, I think there is some facet of, okay, if I build over so 100% square feet onto my facility, yes, now I got to go back and meet the terms of the recycling siting that were that are now in the original ordinance. Well, it's the same thing as like if I have this little teeny beach cottage. Well, I can't add on to it more than like 50 square feet, or else I've got to upgrade all of the foundation to today's code. So yeah.
Yep. Well, and I also feel like, if it were a business by business thing, it's almost based on what your output is. And that's where, Tom, honestly, audits come in. And because if the city is going to do something like this, and it's, mandated in this, you have to have enforcement. And I know that's down the road. You know, that's down the road, but you know, it's always it's like Tom and I, running around after the places who say that they're green restaurants, or my little food trucks that say that they're green. And then we, see them green lighting and, serving up styrofoam at a different festival.
Mhm.
You're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So, and so we can't run around and then what are we going to do? It's not our festival, but like you're out there representing and saying you're Virginia
Yeah.
green.
That's such a good point, Tracy. I just added that to the one above about, if we're going to have a mandate, it has to be, we had the same thing where I used to live, like the enforcement just, it was the, yeah.
Well, and then they're related to permitting then, if you want to go back to the word permit, now we're talking about festivals and events.
Yeah.
True. There's
So-
lots of different permits. And so maybe permit, the word is just given permission to operate, which really what it means. And so in any faction, to operate as a business that's creating trash, or an event that's whatever you're doing that's creating waste, that will you get permission to do it, you have to submit a plan for your recycling and your composting in order to be allowed to do what you're going to do.
And your vendors need to be complying, because you are being asked to comply.
Yes.
I mean, literally, Brian, for 2015, Alicia had us doing a full report card on every one of the vendors. Of course, Tracy was helping us, go through each one of those folks, and they had to show that they had the proper practices and materials in place before they were even allowed to be on the vendor list.
I mean, they signed a contract.
Yeah.
They bought product from me and nowhere else in order to make sure that they were doing it right.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going.
Right.
All right. Create sustainable waste reduction programs for small businesses that can be easily replicated. I don't know.
This is more education,
Yeah.
but it's like address, design, educate, design assistance to take care of small business also. I mean, that's really the point, is that a big business is required to do something, they can figure out how to do it. Small restaurant, whatever small is, there should be more incentives and educational outreach there.
I feel like this is a tactic. It's more like how we're going to help them. And these are, these are our instructions and guidance and tools around composting.
Right.
Both for your internal audience and your external audience. Same for recycling, I see that.
That's true.
So
I think
like, don't forget small business.
Yeah, I agree. It's sort of more on the implementation side. Like, in order to have the mandate, you gotta, think about these things. Okay, great. So we already did number 9. Number 10, make Richmond a leader in attracting companies that promote a circular economy through creative and innovative solutions to waste reduction and recovery. I don't know what that means.
I don't know how
You'll have to help me.
I don't know how to do that, but I like it. I mean, we're going to lead by example, clearly.
Yeah. Hey, Sharon, are you done with your industrial group?
We got through the first part and then decided we wanted to check out what others were doing.
Cool. Okay. Well, we're talking commercial waste here, and just to catch you up on where we are looking at this strategy number 10 about attracting companies that promote a circular economy. And Tracy, sorry I didn't mean to interrupt, but what does that mean, and how can we do it?
Well, I mean, I think it's great. I don't know, there are tactics underneath that are, that are marketing driven from whoever. Does Greater Richmond Partnership still exist? Remember Greg Winfield? Anyway, whoever's selling Richmond to the world, this needs to be a priority. And we need to have great companies that we can highlight and do case studies on them right now that are, do we have any that are truly living a circular, who would we consider great examples if we have any right now? And then we need to use them as tools.
Well, I mean, it could be like,
and that's not a strategy. I feel like that's a way to do what, that's one tactic or.
But there are little pieces to this too, like that would, are sort of circular. It's kind of like even just from a standpoint of like a food service, or maybe it's a brewery or something that is, putting out its own containers and requiring them to come back, to be washed and reused and in the same capacity again.
Mhm.
It's just little
True. Well,
pieces.
because, yeah, and Tom, to that point, I mean, again, I'm not even sure who that is in Richmond, or even if you would consider highlighting those in Virginia that other could emulate. I don't know what that is, but
Yeah.
if there aren't any, that's absolutely
Well,
the
I mean,
folks who come to mind who would end up being those folks.
but I think maybe what we need to be doing here is, because I don't feel like an expert on this at all. I hear the concept, I'm like, yeah, it's a great concept, but we need examples.
Mm.
Who's doing this? Who is from an economic development standpoint help bring somebody to town, and why was it useful? And maybe we as a group can go out there, Google a little bit on that.
Yeah.
Before I think we need to know what we're talking about before we put
You
it
mean
as
circular economy?
What's that?
You mean circular economy?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
I
that
mean,
would
there
be
are different levels of circular economy for sure. And I do agree with the fact that, number one, this is a new term that we're just introducing at point number 10.
Mm.
So, and I know these numbers don't mean anything, but we need to be pretty succinct with our terminology, I think, because we've got a lot going on.
Yeah. So I just so this tab that I'm on now is the start of a glossary. I'm just adding circular economy in case we end up using that, so we don't forget that if we do use that term, we need to define it for sure. And Tom, to your point, I think definitely before this can go out to the community, like I mean, I read this and I'm not sure what it means. So, in terms of like a layperson understanding what we're trying to do here, I don't know. I think this could use some examples for sure. We don't have to come up with those right now, but if you'll have any thoughts, I'm happy to take them down.
What about like that, we were talking about the the group, is it Scrap RVA?
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Yeah.
that's like an example of something like that?
Well, they take and this is something we were talking about too, that in a lot of these you need to be careful your wording.
Yeah.
And Tom will remember years ago when we were trying to set up waste exchanges, and it can't be a waste because waste has all kinds of regulations. And so excess materials is what they do.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they sell them mostly to like, I think artists and crafters and stuff. Yes.
But to be honest with you, I feel like we need more of those opportunities. We need the swap, the old day swap to come back. I mean, people need to be swapping stuff. One man's treasure's another man's trash. And Scrap is awesome, but she's so full she can't take anymore. She's one little shop. If there was one of those on every corner, or like think about if every high school athletic team would hold a jersey drive and everybody brought all of my kid had 15 jerseys, baseball, different shirts a season. And it was, there needs to be more opportunities for swapping and
Yeah.
Well,
All right. So
third
Tracy, go ahead, Tom, and then I want to.
I know we need to go forward, but like one very tangible thing are like the colleges when they
Yes.
do change outs. U of R does a great one. VCU does kind of one.
Yep.
But if we could, help support more of those things
Yes.
when those opportunities arise.
I love it.
Yep. So look at the very next strategy: promote a circular economy by fostering community spaces for sharing resources, like reuse, rental, repair. So I think
Awesome.
someone was thinking in the same way you all are, and I think maybe this one I think is less plagued by the language barrier because it does have some some examples or meat on the bones kind of thing. But any changes you all make to this one?
I think in general that one is more clear, but what it does is if we've got both of them, then we're creating a distinction. So You know, maybe from a circular economy, let's go back to who really put that in there at first, but it's like maybe that's more like plastics. You know, if you're going to produce, you're going to collect plastics, let's reprocess them here in this community, you know, at a facility, and turn them back into things that are going to go back into this community. Or else it's really just get to the point, figure out, you know, I mean, it ties in with the plastic bags or whatever. I mean, getting rid of plastic bags. Well, now we're, you know, we are reusing those same bags every time we go to the grocery store, you know, in its most simplistic form. But really, I think it kind of refers more to like, okay, figuring out all these other things and diverting them back to, you know, uses versus trash and even recycling first.
Yeah. Cool. All right, let's keep going. Partner with manufacturers to reduce solid waste generation through repairability of products, transitioning materials used in packaging, and promoting zero waste initiatives. Sharon, I'm curious, on the manufacturing side, was this something that was under the industrial waste category? No. Okay. All right.
Yeah. But I think that, I mean, I don't know. I look at that and I say, yeah, that's a great thing for a global objective. But honestly, what is manufactured in the city of Richmond? Cigarettes, probably component. I don't really know, but like, I don't, unless you're talking about like some of the small businesses that are making, you know, very nice suits and that kind of stuff that are, and there are some of those that are really promoting repairability. I don't really know what our manufacturing sector consists of, and
Yeah,
how relevant it is.
interesting to.
Well, it's just such a dilemma because it's a bigger issue, and yet it's the freight train of the economy that we're trying to step in front of.
Okay. So good strategy, but we're not quite sure where it applies at this point, at least.
In Richmond, within our,
within our scope, sort of.
It's just not a localized thing so much, unless we do have, like Sharon said, those manufacturers that I'm not thinking of. I don't know who that is.
But by the way, Sharon, we've already required recycling and composting, so we've taken care of that already for you.
Yeah. Okay. Number 13, broadcast an education campaign geared toward residents, businesses, and institutions to inform them how to reduce upstream emissions generated by the local economy. Upstream emissions. I'm guessing this is like purchasing and whatnot, or I'm not quite sure.
Well,
Anybody?
I think this is kind of like educating the public at a local level about larger global and national issues, potentially like, you know, taking the information from the nonprofits and things that are working on sustainable packaging, you know, or some of these like circular economy type concepts and organizations, and, you know, helping to put them in front of our residents.
Okay. If y'all are good with that, I'm going to add upstream emissions to our glossary list.
It's not really emissions.
Yeah, I don't know really.
Is it like impacts, or?
I would say environmental impacts, you know, if you're doing an educational campaign.
So it's more, okay.
Let's see.
Well, and because what we're trying to get to there is making consumer choices.
Right.
Cool. Okay. Last one, and we can come back to any of these. Incentivize repair shops to market services that encourage citizens to extend the life of existing objects, reducing waste. Seems like this fits under the
repairability.
Yeah, the number 11 maybe /12.
Yep.
Yeah, such as.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be pretty neat, like almost like a small tax, like a tax incentive on your business taxes or your property tax, well, whatever. If you are technically a repair shop.
Okay. All right, great. So we got through our list. I feel like we did really good. These comments are great in terms of refining all of this. I do need to take a very quick break. I am 7 months pregnant, so I can't make it through a 2-hour meeting at this point without taking a break. So if y'all want to take a minute, feel free. When I get back, what we're going to be doing is going through the equity tool components and thinking about, okay, now that we kind of have an idea of what our strategies are, how can we do things like create jobs, anything related to like affordable housing, things like that. So I will be right back.
Hi, Sharon. Hi, Tracy.
Hi.
I think it's time for a Diet Coke, Tom.
Yeah, I'm going to step away from.
You know what's
You don't
sad?
deliver them anymore?
Sharon, do you know that like I literally like think of you every single time I'm making the decision to buy Pepsi or Coke.
And I hope you make an informed decision.
I'm on Diet Coke right now.
All right.
It's usually just, it really doesn't matter. It's kind of like what's on sale. I mean, and you know, my thing now is like, I don't ever get it because of COVID. I stopped getting shopping carts of any kind. I just carry my bags.
Oh, really?
So therefore, it's usually more a function of like what I run into first, because I'm trying to avoid having to walk all the way down to the Pepsi.
I just wear gloves and I pretend, well, I am always cold, but last year I extended that really pretty late in season.
Well, you know, I mean, I don't know, we've ever talked about before. I have Raynaud's disease.
Me too.
Syndrome. Yeah, it's really bad considering I like to, you know, go surf fishing in 40 degree temperature. And it doesn't need to be 40. It can be, I'm wearing gloves at 60. You know.
Yeah, I find like the 40s and 50s are the worst.
Yeah. No, it's painful. We're not talking about pregnancy, Brianna. We're talking about
You sounds like it could be. I am very glad to be working from home, that's for sure. All right, so let me get my screen back up here. I think we probably have about 15 minutes or so. So we're definitely, you know, we're not going to walk through in as much detail. What I was thinking, and something that's worked with some of the other groups that we've done this with, is we could kind of go down each column in terms of the topics associated with the equity screening tool. And so, for example, we'll start with community wealth. And just think about all of the things that we just talked about, all of the strategies, and which ones where might be opportunities to do things like create jobs, especially well-paying jobs, increase access to jobs, that sort of thing, if that works for you all. Cool. Okay. So again, within sort of commercial waste reduction strategies, where are potential opportunities to create jobs? And I'm just going to be taking notes, and we'll be, you know, gathering all this information together after the meeting.
Well, obviously the infrastructure of collection. I mean, if that's the, you know, the nature of what's happening. And I know along these same lines, we were talking about the fact that there's a new strategy of having more of these facilities to begin with. So there's a business creation opportunity, which has jobs as a natural part of it. Yep. As well as within the city to manage such an initiative. Do you know what I mean? Like there's the hub of it, and then there are everybody that branches out from it, which could be directly related to city employee or contractors, partners, Is that?
Yeah, I think a lot of like these sort of services could really lend themselves to small operations that are localized and
Very much so.
which is what's already happening,
Yep.
How about on the, I'm just curious, on the construction and demolition side, is that sort of a like an industry within an industry, or is it more on the construction company's, responsibility to provide those sorts of things?
Ron, it's basically just contracting with a hauling company that is taking it to a C&D recycling certified business.
Mm,
So there's places that just crush everything up and throw it in a landfill, and then there are other places that like separate stuff out so that they can, and they have to certify that. A lot of it's just they're crushing the concrete and all those things that can go in that pile, and making sure that it gets to a construction company that is doing road hauling or road construction or whatever. But that is a big thing versus just the easy route of just taking it to the landfill. But that also is based upon, like the composting thing, you got to have those facilities, you got to have those companies that are doing it. So we need to actually be aware of that's something that I can't think of the Ace Recycling was the only one that was doing that in this region at least 10 years ago, when I was kind of working more closely on those issues around here. So
okay. Awesome. And then how about on the sort of output side, especially for composting? We have like the services and the infrastructure, and then what happens to the composting once it's compost? Are there opportunities there for like what? I don't really know what happens to it.
It's sold to commercial landscapers for mulch and soil amendments. It's sold back to farms. A lot of people who contribute have a share, so that if you're taking my compost, then I can come back and fill up a truck bed of compost twice a year or something.
Got it.
Lots of cool ways to make and big and good money with the resale of compost, if everybody got on the bandwagon and realized it.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Yeah, I just bought some 50-50 mix and it was expensive.
Yeah.
There's also a circular economy piece to this too. So, where we could be collecting all this stuff, we could be, helping to support a viable business with jobs and et cetera. And now we are turning around and, selling that compost back to facilities that need
local communities, supplying it for free to community gardens in underserved areas.
And some of this stuff ends up, at Lowe's.
I love it going back into the neighborhood, because Sharon, you're right. It's a perfect, more localized kind of a thing. It's like if every dump site was allowed to enough acreage to create a compost facility, and it could be that same, it's just a natural next section of that, and the land was given up by the county. Nobody had to buy it. If you were willing to open the business, the county would give you the land.
Well, Tracy, that, for years that, when the city was collecting leaves and debris, they were taking it to various dump areas. And one of them was the one out off of Williamsburg Road. What's the name of that facility there?
East End something.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, when I was, kind of doing housing renovation and stuff a lot back then. And so we were getting our mulch there. It's free mulch.
Yeah.
And so, the city was doing it, and I guess they were providing it as a service overall. So,
yeah, that's interesting. So on the just while you're mentioning that, Tom, on the sort of topic of housing and affordable housing, as we think about, I know this might be a stretch, but like as we think about providing like green space and things and affordable housing, maybe there's an element to pull in on the local economy part of like the compost being provided from the city to like, help with that or something.
Yeah, because right now, if it's just going to a landfill, it's a loss.
Right.
So, yeah,
Completely, yeah.
I
Okay.
mean, it's a little abstract, but I think, yeah, it could
I don't
be.
know that, I wouldn't say it would make affordable housing, but it
Yeah.
would definitely make affordable housing more attractive and more livable to have green space, community gardens. Maybe the community does have someone who's willing to step up and be that. And they have composting right there in their community garden. Nobody has to pick it up. Like, they know how to do it. I know that's asking a lot, but all it is education, and going in with like a Better Housing Coalition. And the next time they pop 8 cool houses up for people, go in there and teach them, and teach them everything else that goes along with owning a home, a sustainable home.
Mhm.
And yeah, so we have our urban farming programs, and then we've got RVA Groundworks, programs like that can
Yeah.
Ron?
go through the motions anyhow, even if the economic model doesn't quite make sense
Yeah.
by
Okay.
itself.
Great. Okay. Didn't want to get too into that yet. So let's keep talking jobs. I'm just scrolling through our strategies to see if there's any other kind of big topics that we addressed, in addition to like just the overall industry and expansion.
I would say where all of this education is involved, there's certainly, whatever that means, I would love, it would seem like we would have educators. That could cover multitude of audiences and topics and settings, go to schools, go to businesses. There needs to be a feet on the ground when we're allowed to be, I would think. So maybe there's that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think definitely.
On the one above, number 5.
Yes.
So I thought polystyrene was just banned as of next year for 2025.
Yes. Oops. Sorry.
There was some balloon.
Yes. So we had, and sorry, when I'm scrolling, we're not, this isn't set up to show the revised strategy. Sorry about that. But yes, so we made a note, like we need to update this list because I'm pretty sure there's a couple things that have happened in the last just couple months or something. I don't know, that to be updated here. But yeah.
Well, Sharon, I think we were going to make it read that we would advocate for, good environmental, initiatives such as these types of things.
Yeah.
Because all these things are, even though they pass something, we still need to continue to push for them.
Right. Okay. How about on, I know we changed the language of this around like corporate partnerships with green programs, local green business challenge, anything, potentially jobs access related to that y'all can think of.
I mean, again, it just sort of ties in, like Tracy said, general education, there are going to be some folks that we'd want to employ to help do that.
Yeah.
And then, the circular economy ones, or the sharing or whatever. I wouldn't say that there would be some education, or there would be some folks potentially that the city would, employ to help do that, but those are going to create more jobs, are going to create more of these businesses that, are incentivized to start a sharing business, start a repair business.
And some people will want to, go to those businesses if they hear they're Virginia Green or whatever.
And what a cool program that would be. Like with Richmond, I don't know if there's a small bit Richmond business. I should know, I'm a small business. Or retail merchants, like really getting them like engaged in these new sectors of stuff. I don't know, and just somehow encouraging it from the get-go, from the real people who are, dealing with people.
Awesome. So I think jobs, we've got a ton of opportunities here. So let's keep going. Any other thoughts on the housing end of things? And again, we're not trying to stretch and make all of these applicable to all of our community priorities. We just want to be noting where those opportunities might be. On the recycling end, this isn't maybe directly, providing, the mandate that we have somewhere on multifamily recycling, that would just be good all around for all housing, making it, having that as a service. But any other thoughts?
Again, I think recycling is just another word for organic waste, because what we want to do there, we want to do with recycling.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to mimic.
Well,
Both of the services will only make affordable housing better affordable housing.
right. And as things exist, it's kind of like affordable housing and recycling don't necessarily go together right now. Because, historically, at least those areas weren't serviced.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. How about on the next community priority, which is beautiful and safe neighborhoods. So with this one, we heard a bunch of things from the community on this community priority. It was about, things like beautification, litter reduction, what else? Provision of green space, things like that. So I think definitely potentially on the litter reduction, just the infrastructure for these services could be helpful.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the biggest complaint, I would throw this away, but there's no can, or I would recycle this, but there's no can. And so, just having it available, and then the education, and then the pride in the neighborhood comes natural after that. And then the upkeep is presumed.
Yeah. And on, I guess, depending on what actually comes of this General Assembly, these kinds of plastic bags and all of that stuff, I think that would help with that.
Absolutely.
And maybe there's something around the sort of like, I don't know, what are we calling these? The repair like workshops and stuff, if they're based within communities and neighborhoods, something about that.
Hey, I know we're on a time limit here, but there's something we've left out.
Yes.
And just this litter piece made me think of it. Is the provision of recycling containers, well, I'm sorry, this is maybe the government piece, but maybe if we could remind them to include this as well. When we have trash cans on city streets, we need recycling containers next to them.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. So the first objective, I'm just going to go up to it so I can model zero waste through municipal operations, which I think is, I don't know. Let me put it in the comments so it's not forgotten, at least.
It should be a requirement also. And in fact, back we referred to DC requirements or whatever, San Francisco, et cetera. I mean, literally, you have to have a recycling container next to your trash containers in your, like, even the food service industry has to have it. They get fined. So it's not just a municipal thing, it's the businesses themselves.
Wouldn't that be awesome if trash, real landfill, recycling, and compost all went to the same one county facility? Now Henrico would be screwed because maybe they'd need two, but in counties like that. And it all just goes, and so it's just trucks that go around, but they collect everything. They've got 3 compartments or I don't know what that, but they get on a schedule and they know, I don't know. Maybe it's when we put out a bin, it's got a GPS thing on it and they can tell that it's by a curb, and that's how they'll go out and collect. And it's based on where it is, and a smart mapper that sends a truck out to only get what's out, or I don't know.
Sort of like
All gotta be fixed.
Dominion smart meter kind of stuff. I mean, I'm sure that technology exists
Well,
somewhere.
it exists for parks and there's a trash can that has GPS on it that they can tell that when it gets to the top, so that park
cool.
and empties when necessary instead of going out and wasting the bag.
Yeah,
That's cool.
that's awesome. Okay, so we talked through neighborhoods. How about health as a community priority? And this was physical and mental health. So I think, I don't know where to put this, but I'll just make a general note, but definitely all the things we've been talking about related to litter reduction, you know, related to like litter in our streets, our water system, all of that. You know, we do obviously clean the water before people drink it and all of that, but there could be potentially something there, less on the burden of cleaning the water if there's less litter in it.
Mhm.
But any other thoughts on health and the commercial sort of waste reduction strategies we've been talking about?
Well, I think the one you had with the General Assembly actions,
Yes.
certainly like microplastics,
Oh,
or even just where we're eating things that have ingested plastic, you know.
yeah. Cool. And I'll put this sort of, oh, I just got the notification we have 5 minutes, but we're doing really good. So any other thoughts on health and commercial waste reduction?
My brain keeps coming back to rats.
Rats?
Yeah.
Reduce bubonic plague rates.
Hey, at this point, yeah.
Yeah, nothing is far-fetched.
Yeah.
That's my DC experience. I'll share a video with you all if I can find it someday of one night where there were literally 50 rats in the picture.
You know what, actually, this is something we talked about yesterday in one of the other groups, but we don't just have to think about the opportunities, but also on maybe the education piece / equity piece. I don't know where this fits in, but I think there's probably going to be some concern, especially in communities that are already facing these litter problems with like, well, I don't want to put compost out because that will attract pests. So I don't, you know, I think that fits in with the education and not necessarily like our equity tool, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's a good point. I mean, but yet, you know, every business that starts in on the composting thing thinks, oh no, it's going to be a smell. You know, food doesn't decompose that quickly. It's like,
Right.
and it's a sealed lid. You know, you know, you probably do a better job with sealed, you know, with container design a little bit, but yeah, it needs to be talked about.
So it's just an education component, really, of like, this is how it actually works. Okay. All right. So then the last thing, since we have a little bit of time, well, we have a couple minutes really. We have these 3 more procedural elements of our racial equity tool, which is generally racial equity, which I think you know, comes out in a lot of the other components of, you know, thinking about like affordable housing and jobs access, you know, focusing on these communities where there historically has not been access to jobs and whatnot, naturally gets to the racial equity piece. Then we have equitable engagement and government accountability. So we can talk through that, but also any thoughts you all have on that. The other last question I have is, are there any gaps in what we talked about as far as commercial waste reduction strategies? Not that this is the last time, you know, this isn't the final list at all, but anything that y'all can think of that we didn't talk through as a strategy that you might want to add in?
Yeah, reporting.
Mm-hmm.
Guys,
on behalf of like the business, like businesses have to report or
yes,
something like that?
if you're in Fairfax County, you fill out a monthly report on what your recycling and waste data was.
Okay. Yeah, we don't have that.
And how, I mean, maybe that is how, I'm not entirely sure. How is an incentive, if you comply with an incentive, how are you there? How is that verified? Maybe it's probably not a monthly thing, although we'd love to have that, but yeah,
Well,
definitely.
yeah, I mean, there are going to need to be inspectors.
Yeah,
Plain and simple.
jobs. That was another job. Do we have
yeah.
that?
That's a good, yeah.
The enforcement piece of that?
Yes.
Well, you could just say reporting and enforcement,
Yeah.
because that's part of that, requirement.
Right. If you've, yeah, don't.
Any other gaps? We probably have like a minute or so left.
Did you have in here waste audits, Tom?
Yep.
No. So is that something that like the city would do, for example? Is that part of reporting, verification,
that-
enforcement?
Almost like enforcement a little bit. I mean,
Well, so Tom was saying that we were chatting offline about this, that in DC, they have to do it because they're LEED buildings. So maybe it's the requirement is that the city encourages or incentivizes or requires new buildings to be LEED certified, which then brings with it that waste audit requirement.
Well, and again, auditing is actually, a free function of like Fairfax County. I mean, they literally will come through and work with folks to help them develop, it's education as well, but there is some auditing component there.
I think this is an extension of the health department. Should be the health and sustainability department.
Yeah, the health department where I used to live did the polystyrene ban enforcement, which was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it makes sense. They're the ones closest to food and restaurants, and they have to go in for other reasons.
Brian, I would, like Sharon said, mention LEED, potentially just try and fold that in there as well, like an omelet.
Yeah, and the Buildings and Energy Group has definitely talked about things related to this. So I just put a note that might tie in. But thank you guys so much. It looks like we're about to end.